Also, my computer is so loud. My goodness. I'm sorry if you guys can hear the fan, you know. I've just been working it to death, I guess. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from The Beckisphere, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Becky, and every Tuesday and Thursday we talk about the climate here. The problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, go ahead and click that subscribe button below, hit the like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And today we are going to talk about climate change education, particularly relating to K-12 education, and more specifically in the US for the most part. So as you probably know by watching this channel so far, I am from the US, I'm from California, and while I do my best to make most of my videos globally relevant for y'all that are not from the US, I think this is something that's still very valuable for people not in the US to watch and listen to. But because education systems differ so heavily throughout the world, I thought it would just be easiest to just focus on where I am. So that's what I'm going to do today. Is we're going to talk about public education of climate change in the US for K-12. So why is climate change communication important for K-12 kids? Well, firstly, climate change communication helps decrease climate change impact for a person. A small study in Italy found that participants who were involved in a 2-year climate change educational program decreased their carbon emissions anywhere from 7% to 35% per household. So it was a small study, but there is definitely evidence that points to education helping to decrease climate emissions per household, which is not really that surprising, honestly. The more you know, the more you can help or decrease your impact. Another reason why it is important is because, well, the current generation that's going through K-12 continuously are going to be more impacted by climate change. Honestly, it's just the respect of teaching them about their reality. A survey done in 2019 by NPR and Ipsos found that 3/4 of Americans say that climate change should be taught in the class, with 2/3 of parents saying that it shouldn't even require parental consent to teach it in class. In addition to that, it also found that 68% of teachers, 68 or 86% of teachers say that they thought climate change should be taught in class. However, 55% of teachers also said that they were not properly trained on the topic of climate change to feel comfortable teaching it in class. Only 42% of teachers are actually teaching it in class. Though a bright side is that they seem to be doing it pretty creatively. It wasn't just science teachers that said they were teaching it in class. It was also English teachers and even second language teachers teaching it. So they found creative ways to integrate it into their class, which I'll get more into later. Also, it found that only 45% of parents actually taught climate change to their kids. So even though most parents want climate change taught to their kids, only 45% are actually doing so themselves. And that could probably be because a lot of parents don't feel comfortable about teaching the topic of climate change either. So in general, we need better education for the general public too. In 2019, Italy and Mexico agreed to step up their own climate education programs. And they called all other countries that were in the Paris Climate Agreement to also do so by COP26, which will be in 2026. They did have a big plan on incorporating it into like teach-ins in Earth Day of 2020, but I'm not convinced that that was very successful after COVID hit. So unfortunately, that kind of strained that project. Currently in the US, 20 states and DC teach climate change as it is required to do so for the next generation science standards. So science teachers of states that follow those standards are required to teach climate change in their class. 36 states include the term the reality of human-caused climate change in their school standards, but it often is just a very brief mention, and it doesn't necessarily mean that all states require it to be taught in all their classes. It might only be for specifically science classes usually, or for more specific classes like earth science, which not every student is required to even have to take that class. And another thing that came out of the survey done by NPR and Ipsos is that 65% of teachers did not feel that climate change related to the topic they were teaching. So that's a very big disconnect between teachers and knowing how to incorporate climate change in the conversation. There's also been pushback in several states by prominent Republicans usually, arguing that climate change is still a controversial topic, which it's not. So that's also been an issue in states such as Arizona, Maine, and Montana, among several other states too. And in 2017, the Heartland Institute, which is a conservative think tank, one of those ones that calls itself an institute, the Heartland Institute in 2017 sent a book to all the science teachers in the US. And this book was called Why Scientists Disagree About Global Warming. They sent that out to all science teachers in the US in 2017. So needless to say, we are also seeing some pushback on creating mandatory climate education, integrating it into the education system from conservative think tanks and conservative lobbying groups and prominent Republican heads. So, great. But there are a couple bright points too. In 2020, New Jersey became the first state to require lessons in climate change be taught in every grade from K through 12. And Washington State seems to be following through a similar line. They haven't had that sort of declaration yet, but there are a lot of nonprofits that are working in the state to try to figure out how best to integrate climate change into the overall topics. And climate change, again, is currently being taught, or human-caused climate change is being mentioned in the curriculum of 36 states. But there are some other states that either tell it in a way that it's inconclusive that humans are causing climate change, or they just don't even mention the human cause at all, or they specifically misrepresent climate change as a whole as a controversial issue. The fact that that is still happening in 2021 is terrifying. So another thing that I noticed is that it, again, is usually only brought up in science standards. It is not a requirement in any other curriculum. And again, 65% of teachers feel that it is not applicable as a topic in class. And that's concerning because honestly, there are so many ways to connect climate change to every single topic out there because it impacts every single topic out there. Another thing that I saw that was an interesting thing about climate change education is that it also really just focused on middle schoolers and high schoolers. And I think that there's something to be said for creating foundational understanding and nurturing mentality towards nature in elementary school. So I would argue that it is essential to also educate kids about at least stewardship of nature at an elementary school level, and that could be incorporated through a elementary school garden, which I think should be mandatory for every elementary school to have a garden, or every school. Ooh, I don't know. I'm just saying things now. So that being said, I have a lot of resources for teachers and educators and parents and even kids themselves if they want to check them out down below on how to better incorporate climate change into your teaching regardless of what you're teaching. Some of the suggestions that are brought up by organizations, including NPR and NOAA, include bringing the kids out more in nature and learning about nature and bringing it from that element, talking about the history of climate change denial and climate change, also just science in general, talking about government's role in environment and climate mitigation and adaptation, incorporating it into long-term math problems. That was a fun one that I found because we have to do those long-term math problems all the time in school, and why not just make it something that has to relate to climate change, like how much carbon dioxide is emitted from a 3-hour drive with this car, with this, there's ways of incorporating it into math as well. So every topic can have climate change incorporated into it, and that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult for schools to figure out what to do to incorporate it in, but also it makes it quite exciting because, again, 42% of teachers who are teaching climate change in class, they varied quite a bit on what subjects they taught and how they incorporated it into climate change. A letter signed by prominent people such as Gina McCarthy, who used to be at the head of the EPA in Obama era, and now she is a climate envoy for the president. She signed an agreement with a bunch of other educators pushing for climate education. So it's good to see that there is someone in the White House who cares about that topic. I honestly I know that it is in the conversation of climate change, like things that need to be done on the White House page, like website, talking about climate change. Education is in there. But we haven't seen it very much in this conversation, especially for this month being Earth Month. So maybe it'll come up a little later. I mean, technically it hasn't been Earth Day yet, but I haven't really seen all that much news regarding climate change education in U.S. public schools. So that's a little concerning to me that no one has brought it up so far, but I'm hoping that changes soon because as we are getting our schools back on track, this is our opportunity to really decide what is important to catch kids up on. So anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that it is essential to have climate education in our public school systems? How would you recommend doing so? And if you are an educator, let me know especially what you're thinking about whether or not you've been able to incorporate climate change education into your curriculum, and what is requirement for you. Now I have to let my cat in. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. On Thursday, we do not have the book club, but I might have something in the pike. So, is that the right term? I don't know. What do you think, Rue? Anyways, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Remember to talk about the climate every single day and to support your local news organizations. Right, Rue? You support them, don't you? He goes, I don't read. Okay, say bye! Shh. He's biting me.